Okay, this is A+ setups for the week of March 31st, the first week in April. First, the performance this week. Not what I really want to talk about, but this trade at 68, which was the first fade, is still in the balance, is a valid trade, valid stop out. The next trade is also that's an A+ setup. That was a stop out, and then this third trade was same sequence, was also an A+ setup. This trade in the morning on Thursday was a valid stop out. Played it defensively, and just the market went further than it should. These three trades are really invalid. Poor analysis. The sequence was wrong. The time of day was wrong. These are 100% avoidable. That's 3R right there. So, and then this short at 30 on Friday morning, I believe, is a valid A+ setup. Same with this one, 41, and then this one was at the 61.8 retracement, and the day's bias had developed against the trade, but the location was excellent. There was huge exhaustion. It was Friday, and that was kind of the weird part about it, and I think that it was mostly Friday and probably short covering that made this a little difficult, but I don't think that these were not valid because they were with the STF bias, which was bearish, and they were all at good location and with exhaustion. And so that's that. So for Monday, I took no trades. There were no A+ setups. I was willing to short up here on an exhaustion, up higher, like up into 20 and into this VWAP in mid area, but it didn't get there. And then I was willing to take a long on exhaustion. There was, I think, a support level in here, so right in here, but there was a big response just before the zone. So I pulled that order, and then I think there was a zone like in this area, and I was not willing to trade the zone. I didn't think the zone really, it just didn't make a lot of sense to me in this zone. So I was waiting lower down here and didn't get there. So by that time, I pulled my order, and if this had gone straight up into here, I would have been willing to trade that as an A+ setup with sort of the hybrid trade. So no A+ setups, some almost, and some trades that could have been made with less stringent rules, but that's not what I'm doing right now. So this was not a setup that I was considering, but it is a valid setup. It's with the larger balance breakdown, false breakout pattern, and the market is crossing the range. There's weakness overnight. There's a lot of things going for this, and then this is an A+ setup. It's at the bottom of the range. It's exhausted. Its first test of this sort of newly formed area, but there was liquidation, and there was some indication that maybe this could have been filtered, but it's a great location. It's the bottom of the range. I have no idea if it's going to stay in the range or not stay in the range, so it's still a trade worth taking. And then after the breakdown and liquidation, the market was hitting key areas down here. There were two levels here, and these are both A+ setups, and the best trades of the week. Really, this trade is probably the best trade of the week, but I took a long here and got stopped out by one tick before first target, and then I took the long here on 36.75, and it was at a key zone, exhaustion, first test, and it was against the bias but with the bigger bias. And so really the only thing you had location, bigger bias, exhaustion first test, the daytime frame, and at this point the STF was pretty much against this. It had broken out of the 10-day balance, but still A plus setup there. And then this I did not trade. This was more of a mixed setup. I was waiting, I think, down here, 39, 38, and I was hoping it would go straight down into here, and that would have been another chance to trade this key zone long on the exhaustion first test, but didn't get there. Didn't do anything there. On this, I was waiting at 83 or 83.75, I think. The zone was a little higher than this, and it just stopped at 80. That would have been an A plus setup. Exhaustion first test, good zone against the day's bias. The STF bias was neutral here. I think this was against the day's bias, but it was going to be good exhaustion first test into a good zone, and I was also willing to short the next zone too. I think wherever that was, this zone was really a good zone. And then when this happened, I was willing to trade. This was starting. Oh, this also was against the possible failed breakdown. So there was some things against this, but it was logical to think there was going to be a tradable reaction down. So maybe not completely A plus here. I mean, the setup didn't happen. So, and then I was willing to trade this pullback with this larger failed breakdown pattern. So this is with the larger pattern. It's with the day time frame. And I was, I think, at 65, 64, 75 or something like that. So when it came down here, it did this. I pulled the order. And then after that, it came down again and would have just gotten first scale, but still a valid, I think, A plus hybrid type zone fade. And then over here, this was an A plus setup also. It was into a key zone. It's against the day's bias. The STF bias is neutral here. The market was pretty exhausted from the overnight. This was some really uncommon strength, but it was going into a key zone. Exhaustion first test. It went further. I think the top of the zone was like 03 or something, and so I took it defensively because of the strength. I think I took it at like 99.50, and so I had to stop at 04. Always changed the zone a little bit, but didn't really matter. There was just a lot of strength, and that was a stop out. And then I was willing to trade this again on a pullback back down, but it didn't get to where I wanted it to be. I wanted it to exhaust like straight down and then try and go back up, and it actually held really well and then went back up. And there was an HVN at 09, I think, and this was an exhaustion here, but this is sort of like it already tested that, so I was willing to trade the next zone, which I thought was an even better zone. I was up at the front of the zone with 2R risk, and that would have been another A plus setup there, but that didn't happen. And then the market liquidated here on news, and with the non-farm payrolls out the next day, there was this news selling, and there was nobody that wanted to step in ahead of non-farm payrolls, so it was kind of a very strange liquidation. And the time of day was a little bit hard for fades. It wasn't really, this all happened around 2 o'clock, so it wasn't really last hour, but the sequence of the day had developed already. So you had the move, the pullback, the swing, the test, and then you're failing down through the IB, and it's liquidating on big volume, and there's this sequence is just wrong. The sequence to trade here, which I did trade here, that was this, and once that had happened, like that's over. That pattern's over. And then I think you can make an argument to trade this bottom of the zone here, but this was liquidation, and you can also just use discretion and just say, I'll just wait. I'll just be selective and wait for another day. The main problem here is time of day and sequencing. And of course this humongous, massive liquidation volume, but based on my rules, I mean, this is the bottom, the range again, so I think at least one trade in here would have probably been valid. And then so Friday morning, this was on the actual news payrolls, so that's not tradable, but that is a bit of an exhaustion into a good zone. The STF bias is bearish. We had broken down through the balance. There was some good exhaustion here, but OASE had the bias as bearish, so I was trading with the bias. And to me, these are all three A+ setups. We got exhaustion, decent zone, first test, and with the bias. So it's against the day's bias. The market did hold above this aggressive support OASE was talking about, but that to me was this is the daytime frame bias developing, and if you had the STF neutral, then I would have given that more weight, but I was giving the weight to the STF bias, and so that's why I stayed with this. And I did see that the market balanced basically above the opening swing and above the RTH mid and VWAP, and then broke out above the IB, and the day was developing bullishly, but there was a very good exhaustion on both of these trades. I got the first scale and then took the stop at the back of the zone each time, and then on this one I took the full stop, and then by that time it's 12 o'clock. It's Friday. It's not the most reliable time to trade after the afternoon on Friday, so although this zone I think was probably valid also, it didn't get to the zone, so it's moot point, but I decided to just say that's it for the week here, and I do think that this is A+, this is A+, and this is A+ because location at this point is the 6-1 retracement of this swing down, and I think just a lot of this had to do with the fact that NASDAQ was at the bottom of its range, and ES had this breakdown pattern, but with NAS at the bottom of the range, and I wasn't looking at that, but I looked at it over the weekend, and I think that had something to do with these trades just being sort of hard and probably should have been managed in a more aggressive way. But since I'm not looking at that stuff, I'm just looking at this. These looked fairly good for this potential, pullback, and then weakness again back with the STF time frame. So overall, one A+ setup here. These three setups I think are A+ setups. This one is, and let's see what else. These two are A+ setups. There's no setup there. And this one still, it's in the 68 area, is still an A+ setup with the bottom of the range. Market had moved a lot, good exhaustion. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 A+ setups, I would say, this week, and there were quite a number of stop outs for A+ setups this week, the way I'm reading it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So most of these were stop outs, and it was just kind of a strange week. A lot more